Welcome to r/Reddit Revenge. This is a story of someone getting back at someone with revenge after being wronged. Thank you friends for subscribing to the channel, and for so many likes. The first story: betrayed group uses my work, fails class, and faces consequences for housing fraud. The second story: cheated out of pay, seek revenge by exposing their fraudulent business. The third story: frustrated by the neighbor's demands, they give up everything in the yard, leaving her with an empty space. The first story is, failed a class because of you. No house for you. I was a low-level professional soccer player while I was in college. At least once a semester I would go off and play in a tournament for a couple of weeks. What was supposed to be my last semester, I took a class with a group of friends. In this class, we had a huge group project that was for a majority of our final grade. My group was 2 friends, Crystal and Dee, some woman named Tia, and an acquaintance named Carla. Knowing that I would be traveling from the end of March to mid-April, I decided to do all my parts for the group project early. Basically, our project was a study of a public hospital's expenses. Over the span of 3 weeks, I conducted 5 interviews with different hospital administrators and a board member. I was accompanied by another group member for only one of the interviews. The rest I did by myself. I wrote the transcripts, created my reports, and the subsequent analyses from each of the interviews. By doing most of the work for the project, I was made project leader. I wrote the introduction and the beginning of the body. All in all, I had about 60 pages written out for our final report, as well as the 5 videotapes of the interviews. Then I left for my tournament. I told the rest of my group to email me if they needed anything, and to keep me abreast with how the project was going. This class was also being instructed by the flakiest professor in the college. He was tenured and also a former political powerhouse. He barely had class. He had no set syllabus. He used the same syllabus for all of his classes with no specific dates for projects and exams. By having taken his classes a couple of times prior, one gets to know his schedule. He was also informed of my travel dates in writing and via email. Well, upon my return, I tried to contact the group several times. Texts, calls, and emails. No reply from any one of them. I went to class and it was canceled. No one even showed up, so this must have been planned. I'm still trying to get in contact with my group, and still no one is answering me or replying. At this point, I'm starting to get frustrated. I go to the next class. I found out my group is going to present our project. Here's the kicker: I'm no longer part of the group. What the F? According to Carla, they thought that I was not coming back to class because I was gone for so long. I told her I'd been calling and texting everyone since I got back in town. They also knew my schedule since it was emailed to all of them as part of the project schedule. During my absence, Carla made herself the project leader, since she was the oldest in the group. It is the same exact project. My material was still the bulk of the work done for the project. The entire report was 72 pages long, and that's including the cover and source pages. My original 60 pages was still my original work. They did not even alter it to make corrections. During the presentation, they even used clips from my interviews, but they did not even clip out the parts they needed. They just had the interviews pulled up in 5 different windows, and played the clips from where they were time-stamped from my notes. You could even hear my voice each time they played a video, because they started each clip from where I ask a question. I held my tongue till after the presentation, because I knew none of them did any of the work they were supposed to have done. And by quickly perusing the conclusion of the report, they did not understand what the project was supposed to be about. My first question was the names of the people interviewed. None of them knew their names. My second question was, what was the purpose of the report? Carla tried to BS the answer with, to fire the hospital administrator because he was spending too much money. I asked her specifically, what was the hospital administrator's name? She spouted out, Mrs. Cruz. I answered, it was not Miss Cruz, she's the procurement director. The hospital administrator was Dr. Bill McMillan, and that she should have known this since she was the one accompanied me to his interview. They ended up getting a passing grade, and my professor failed me due to lack of a group project. I tried to appeal my grade since my work was used in a project and used without my permission. I went all the way to the university president, who got a compromise with the professor to give me a final exam. I aced it, but still, the damage was done. I was allowed to retake the course again at no charge the following semester. I even used the same exact project. I don't think he even noticed or cared. I graduated. Crystal and Dee tried to reconcile with me, but I was done with them. Tia saw me the next semester and said she was sorry for what she did. I told her that I had no hard feelings against her. Carla and I met up again later in life. She was at a public housing office and saw me come in. She immediately got up and intercepted me. She asked me how I was doing. You know, after failing that class and not graduating from college. I told her that I did eventually graduate. I also congratulated her on her graduation. She said, "Yeah, thanks to you." I replied, "I know." She goes on to tell me how she has a really good job. Continues by telling me how she's making so much money. I say, "Good for you," and then she gets called to the back. I'm going about my business when I get a phone call from an advisor in my Housing Choice Voucher program. He's telling me that there's someone here saying that they know me from college. I come down and he starts to introduce me as the director for the program before I come around the corner. It was Carla, and she was renewing her paperwork for the HCV program. I greet her as she looks like she swallowed a cactus. Apparently she's been in the program since college, but she never updated her income status. I told my advisor to take a closer look into it. You know, since she told me she has such a great job and is making so much money now. Yep, she did not qualify to be in the program anymore. The second story is, they screwed me out of my pay. I screwed them out of their company. Many years ago, I got a job with a marketing company during phone deregulation. It was the Wild West and a lot of small, long-distance companies sprang up, all trying to get a piece of the pie. Eventually, they all got brought up by the bigger fish. But at the time, they were all paying hired gun marketing firms very well to score contracts for them to lock people in. I got a job with one of those marketing firms, a new age capitalism company that insisted we all do yoga and breathing exercises, while they rang a little bell and gave us affirmations about how many contracts we were all going to sell and how much money we'd all make. The job was 100% commission, but I was always good at sales, so I looked at the pay scale and noticed that it was exponential, presumably to entice people to work hard with impossible payouts. We were allowed to work as many or as few hours as we wanted, with the payout based on your weekly sales numbers. I decided I would give it a shot for 1 week to see how much I could realistically make before deciding whether I was willing to put up with the tasteless vegan snacks and mandatory voluntary yoga regime. For the next week, I pushed myself as hard as I could. For 7 straight days, I worked 14-plus-hour days every single day and used every trick and technique I had learned doing sales to score as many contracts as I possibly could. I figured this would tell me my maximum possible income and could decide on that basis whether to stay. At the end of the week, I had blown everyone else out of the water. In fact, I had not just gotten more contracts than anyone there had ever seen in a week, I had gotten more than any of them had seen in a month. Because of the exponential scale, I realized that I was making absolutely ridiculous amounts of money, $10K plus a week. They had never expected anyone could actually hit those kinds of numbers. Coming in the next week, expecting a huge payday, I ended up with about 5% of what I expected. They told me there were problems with a lot of my contracts, and that I would be allowed to fix them and submit them a few at a time over the next several weeks. These problems were things like an apostrophe wasn't quite clear, or the dash in someone's phone number was slightly crooked. They were going to screw me. That night, I got a phone call from the company's office manager, Frank, who wanted to meet up for a drink. Curious, I agreed. Over beers, Frank told me that the owners of the company were in a panic because I would have bankrupted them. He said they spread out all my contracts on the floor of the office, then they crawled over them, inspecting each one and trying to figure out if I was committing some kind of fraud. When they comprehended that all my contracts were legit, they decided they had no choice but to screw me over. Frank told me he realized at that point that if they would screw me, they'd screw him too, and besides, he was tired of doing yoga. He asked me if I would be interested in going into business with him and go head-to-head with his bosses. I thought it sounded intriguing, but I asked him how he thought we could compete. Frank explained that he had found out they didn't actually have the contract for our city. They were acting as independent contractors for another company, who had the contract to market the service in an entirely different city. They were poaching here, because the person who did have the contract wasn't actively using it. We put together a pitch and approached the guy with the real contract, Joe, and told him about the people poaching his turf. We agreed that we'd split with him. We'd take the upfront money for each contract, and he'd get the back-end money down the road. It was a good deal for everyone. So Joe contacted the phone company and had them threaten the poachers with a big lawsuit if they didn't stop. A week later, Frank and I strolled into the offices of our old employer. Most of the furniture and all the yoga mats was gone, and there was just a table, a couple of filing cabinets, and a file box with the final pay envelopes for everyone. I made a show of counting my money to make sure it was all there, and the two owners, husband and wife, told Frank and I bitterly that they'd have to take cash advances on their credit cards for this money, and asked me if I felt guilty for destroying their lives. I smiled and said nope and left. Our marketing company made us a lot of money over the year, until the company got bought up by Sprint and the gravy train ended. The last story is, Want the yard so bad? You can have the yard all to yourself. Background. Years before the issue neighbor moved in, we had signed a lease agreement that included we had exclusive use and care of the yard. We lived in an upstairs and downstairs duplex and had the downstairs. It was common for upstairs apartments like this to have no yards rights in lease. We allowed the previous tenants to use our things and would have let her had she not been such an issue and rude. Her kid did not live with her and there was on average 1 day a week. This neighbor was under the impression if they could see it, it was shared, including things in my house. Our upstairs neighbor moved in late fall. We used our yard year-round and still had fully legal fires in the winter. Around spring, she started bothering the manager about it. She wants to use the yard and we won't let her. And her kid keeps asking, and we're telling her kid no. I was shocked. We had never talked to the child at all, nor her about the yard. And manager had not brought it up to us. Plus, I'm not a monster. The kid could play in the yard without asking. I heard her saying this outside very loudly on the phone. We tried working things out through the manager. Went through different options. Her/us. Front yard / backyard split. Front and left, her. Side yard split / back and right side yard split. Front, left sides and 70% of backyard / small walkway access out our back door to right side yard. All a big fat no. Neighbor did get their own fire pit after they were told they couldn't use ours, and threw a fit about it, but failed to pay attention to safety guidelines. This included having a 6-foot-plus fire 5 feet from our duplex. 911 was not called but should have been. We were not home at the time. Also video of her and her friends laughing about how it's about to go up, and how they have no water to stop it, and laughing harder about how it could burn the house down. Luckily our dogs and us weren't at home at the time. At this point the daily harassment was insane. She stomped so hard she broke a window in our unit under her stairs. My dog started ripping his hair out from stress because of the non-stop impact noise. We later found out it was a basketball upstairs. We moved our dogs out for their health and safety. Then it was petty revenge. We removed everything we owned from the yard. The fire pit, the patio chairs, tables, firewood, horseshoe pits, down to our rocks, everything. Only left what we did not own, which was nothing but yard. Most of our stuff we gave to our next door neighbor. Then we told the manager she can have the exclusive use of the yard and all that comes with it, the care and landscaping. Manager was more than happy to get her offer back about yard use and asked when we would be giving her the key to our lawnmower. I laughed and said no, she can't use my mower. Even if I did let her, she wouldn't do it. That's your problem now. If I can't use the yard without being harassed, she might as well have it. This is on you. Eventually they got the point and hired someone to care for the lawn, as there was no way she would, even if she had a mower. We had doorbell cameras at this time that covered our back door and backyard, as well as the front yard. She used the backyard once to drag her baby in circles around the house. Once she saw all our SH was gone and she couldn't use it, she was peeved and never used the yard again. Turns out she didn't want the yard, she wanted the SH we owned in the yard. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to know when the new video comes out, and hit the like button to support the channel.